Welcome to my TED Talk. And this ice is going to fall out before I'm even able to get started. Damn my mass. Now, let's start our timer. When I was 30, slightly after my 30th birthday, I did a medical trial. And that medical trial, I was only doing it because I love money, but I don't like working very hard for it. That medical trial, however, I had to do an MRI during it. And by a freakish amount of bad luck and luck simultaneously, they found what was at the time they considered a benign tumor in an MRI. Now, someone of my age to start with, and talking about how I consider myself the luckiest man in the world, the luckiest unlucky man in the world, someone who is my age going in to do a MRI without any symptoms is incredibly rare. And the reason why it's so rare is because people just don't go in for any old reason. MRIs are extremely expensive to actually run, and so hospitals don't just give them out for nothing. You normally have to be twice the age. And they discovered that I had a benign tumor in my brain. At the time when I got the phone call, my first reaction, me being me, was not to be like, oh my god, I have a brain tumor, what am I going to do now? My first reaction was, oh no, am I going to be able to do this medical trial and still be able to get the money at the end of it? The doctor who I was on the phone with told me, no, this is a serious medical condition. You need to do something immediately to try and get on this. He said not to worry. And let's see if we can keep some of the ice in. He said not to worry, and I didn't. COVID then hit, and the second scan that was needed was delayed slightly. Again, I don't know if this ended up being a massive benefit or me being incredibly unlucky that we might have got it sooner and we might have done more care to it. But when the second scan came in, they said that this is possibly cancerous. Most likely to be cancerous due to the aggression of how much the tumor was growing. Now, in that moment, I think that is probably one of the worst moments that I've ever had in my life. I don't think anything tops it. Possibly the surgery itself, but that was more of a physical issue more so than an emotional one. Although there was quite a lot of emotional feelings during it as well. We'll get to that later. So when I was told that I had a brain tumor that was cancerous, he also mentioned that while there is treatment, it is a terminal disease. Terminal meaning that they do not have a medical, a form of medicine or a form of treatment that they know of at the moment that it means that it can be cured. Now my reaction to that was what you'd expect. It was fear and sadness and dread and all those other sort of negative things. But it went away quite quickly because the doctor seemed to read me quite well, seemed to read my sort of my behavior, my emotion, my way of thinking. And he very quickly went into talking about the options and the tasks that could be done to increase my survival rate. And he spoke of having the actual brain surgery itself. He spoke about going on chemotherapy and radiotherapy and what were the side effects of that, what were the benefits, what were the problems. And I chose the, I think the only logical option, if you ask me, was to do what's called an awake surgery. The reason it's an awake surgery, an awake brain surgery, is because when there is a surgery that goes on in your brain, you often see it in films or documentaries where someone is actually doing something while the surgery is going on, whether they be playing a flute or a violin or doing something. And this is not for, it's not a gimmick. The reason being is to show what activity is actually being done in the brain. And because I am right-handed, it meant that the left temporal lobe of my brain affected speech. And so what they had to do during the surgery was test, a very basic form of what's known as articulate, where they just asked me, is this a cat or a dog? And I had to answer. The surgery went well, and afterwards I was still able to speak, although my ability to speech went sort of up and down in waves as over the next couple of days. Now, I have this shining optimistic approach on life, and this would be one of the reasons why. They said before the surgery that my speech would be affected for possibly up to a year, maybe even a year and a half. And it took me 6 days till I was able to come back to perfectly normal way of speaking and being able to hold a conversation. So already I thought I'm in with a very good chance of not surviving, but living longer than the expected time was. When they did the prognosis, which is after they took the brain tumor out and they had a more accurate analysis of the flesh that we were dealing with, they determined that it was exactly as expected. So it was cancerous, it was stage 3, and in the meeting with my mother, we started asking about what is a realistic expectation for life expectancy. Now, it's not like a Hollywood film where they tell you straight out the gate, you've got 2 years to live, off you go, Walter White, and make some meth. They don't do that. What they actually do is they base it on the stats that they have. However, the stats that they have, much similar to the way that we think that the life expectancy way back in the, previous to the 18th century was a lot younger. It's not actually quite the truth, because that was based off of how childbirth was quite a hazard back then, and therefore babies were more likely to die very young, and mothers in the actual birthing process. However, once they were able to, and that brought the average age down. And it's similar with brain cancer. Some people die extremely early, some people live 20 years. And I felt that I was going to be in that area, but they based me off of what the stats that they had, and the stats said 5 years. Now, my mom didn't like that. My mom didn't like that, but she's a tough woman. She is a very tough bird. And at the time, I saw the 5 years, and I saw that as an opportunity. I thought that if one can say in perfect honesty that that is how long I have left to live, that I could milk that and I could use that against it, and that I could do incredible things. And I chose to look up world records for the most money ever raised for charity. I knew that having cancer would instantly get me more attention, and I could use that against itself. And one of the first things that I looked up was a marathon, because a marathon is basically the most popular charitable feat that is accessible and known to people. And I knew 2 things about a marathon, having previously done 3. That you could have a world record for wearing whatever you want. So if you could dress up as a king, if you could dress up as a video game character, you could dress up as an organ and even choose the organ, and however quickly you do it, you can win an award for running it under 4 miles as a queen, for example. And I thought I could use that to break a world record while breaking a more meaningful record of the most money ever raised for a charity. And that was 2.3 million Great British pounds. So because it was over COVID, I had actually tried to use video games in a positive manner. And so I had already set up a channel where I just played video games to keep something good from a bad habit, turn a bad habit into a good habit. So I established that I would break the world record for fastest marathon dressed as a video game character, which is doable, but not easy. I chose to do that world record because it's not something that cancer would help. However, I knew that breaking the world record for most money raised for running a marathon, cancer would massively help, because it would gain me so much more attention. And I decided to use my social media channel exclusively for that. As we speak right now, my social media channel, over all of them, it's close to 6 million followers. And that has happened in the course of about 2 years. I think the model for which I've chosen is part of why my channel has grown so much. Because while I allow people to donate, I don't ask them to donate. What I ask them to do is simply follow my channel, which then makes my channel so large that I'm able to get the sponsorship from companies themselves. And it has been working extremely well, as the fact that I've been invited to do a TED Talk is proving. So now I'm being on podcasts, on Good Morning America shows, Good Morning Britain, Good Morning Ireland, and it's all working now. And what I've found is that the most important thing from all of this is that it has given my life a purpose, a meaning that I never had previously. I enjoyed my job as a fitness class instructor. However, as I was getting into my 30s, I was realizing that I didn't have a career and this wasn't going anywhere. Now, I did lose what my goal in life was before I got cancer, and that was simply to get married and to have a large family. I wanted to be a father that was going to spend most of his time with his children. However, going through chemotherapy and radiotherapy, I am now shooting blanks. I am sterilized, so I'm not able to do that anymore. But what that phrase is, where God closes a door, he opens a window. I now every day have a purpose that I can achieve. I wake up every single morning and I know what my purpose in life is. And very few people have the very few people have that gift. I often think about the Dr. Dre documentary, which is called The Defiant Ones, and it's one of the things that he says very early on, that from his first memory it was all music, and that very few people have that drive. They have that desire to achieve something, and that's all I have now. Everything that I do, almost everything that I do, with the exception of every so often getting a few beers in the pub, everything that I do has the focus of making my channel larger, getting more money to cancer research, sending emails to companies to work with me, finding ways to, unique ways to attract more people onto my social media channels. And in some ways that seems like it's vapid, that there's no meaning to it. However, the ultimate goal is to break a world record and push myself as hard as I possibly can in order to achieve that and leave something behind that has meaning. And like I've said before, my username is the King of Chemo, and someone has said that I identify as the King of Chemo. I don't. It's just a catchy username. But I certainly do identify as the most unlucky man on the face of the earth. And I don't know how I can advise other people to mimic my behavior. I think that I have just been, again, extremely blessed and lucky how my disposition has been all of my life. However, what I would like to pass down to other people who have been through or are going through a situation similar to mine, obviously it doesn't have to be exclusively to cancer, but to simply not let it control your life. It may limit what you are able to do. However, life is a spectrum, and just because you can't do all of it does not mean that you can't have happiness in finding what is left on the earth for you to do, but more importantly, what is left on the earth for you to achieve and contribute to the earth that you live on. But before I go, I forgot to mention this one thing, why I only have one foot that is covered in a plastic sheet. And that is because I put the fun into fundraising, and I do anything to get attention to my social media channel. And this is where, while on the United States of America tour, going across the United States of America from New York to LA, I got a Mr. Beast tattoo on the sole of my foot in order to try and get his attention and get him to join in for one day of the cycle trip. And as you can imagine, that tattoo was agonizing at the time, but I went through a craniotomy before, so I felt that I could tolerate it. And yes, it most certainly has made it more difficult to cycle that distance, but nothing worthwhile can be achieved without sacrifice. So that's how I put the fun into fundraising. That's my first TED Talk.